Hello everyone, welcome back to another edition of Indie Book Review, where today I am reviewing Arbatrary Equilibrium by Sahreth, Baphy, Bowden. So Arbatrary Equilibrium is the final book of the Visitor's Blood trilogy, and, well, let's get into this, shall we? So, the plot basically revolves around the last little bit of the revolution. The vampires are taking over, they're working at overthrowing the Empress of one half of Galdelier and the Emperor of the other half of Galdelier. But then, plot twist happens. There's a vampire virus that is going around, and this vampire virus is kind of like rabies, and shit ensues there, and Connie goes missing, and shit ensues there. Like, there's stuff going on. There's stuff happening all throughout this book with all the characters, and well, I really appreciate that, especially with Connie, because she didn't really have a lot to do in the last book. Like, she was pregnant, and that was kind of her entire story arc. Was Connie is pregnant. Connie is trying to deal with alien politics and trying to ensure that she doesn't get her baby taken away from her before it's even born. Whereas now she's capable of working as a nurse. She works a blood drive for a while to help vampires get their food, which is great. Connie is doing stuff. Connie is being productive and being a part of the story, and that was actually a major plus toward this book. John continues to be John. Silru continues to be Silru. Talof continues to be Talof, so on and so forth. The only one that really has any sort of real major character change in this book is Maluk. And based on how it ended in the last one, it's hardly surprising. I mean, his indiscretion when he was younger came out, and he's getting punished for it. And he punishes himself for it. And there's just this whole major story going on with Maluk and him dealing with the guilt of what he's done and the retribution that he had to go through for everyone else to be okay with it. And hell, okay isn't even the right word. It's more like they accept what he's done, but they don't really trust him anymore. And understandably so. Because if a person's capable of doing something once, they're capable of doing it again. Now, granted, Maluk has changed over time, and who he is as a person has changed over time. But everything coming out and him having to go through what he went through in terms of his retribution, it kind of put a real strain on like everything else, including relations with his son, which brought on a whole family value. It brought on a family arc as well, which, frankly, I enjoyed. The characters were just really well done, and yeah. So, with this being the last book of this trilogy, the ending is a really, really important aspect of this. And when I say that this book knocked it out of the park, I'm not trying to be kind to it. The book, like, the author literally knocked this book's ending out of the park. Like, it's fantastic. Everything is just kind of nice and neat and tied up, and while everything's not entirely all sunshine and rainbows, it's in a position where it can end on a very real note, but in a way that you kind of have this understanding that you're not really going to get much more out of this story. It's just kind of small politics here and there at this point, and there's not really much of a story there. And where it ended and how it ended it just works. It works really, really well. Arbatrary Equilibrium, in terms of the Visitor's Blood series, is the strongest of the three. And that's almost how you want a trilogy to be. You want Visitors, like, you want your final book of a series or a trilogy to be the strongest part. Because this is the part where everything comes to an head. This is where it ends. You have to try and tie up as many loose ends, or all the loose ends if possible, and end it in a satisfying way. There have been a lot of book series and trilogies that I have read where the ending just doesn't work. It just sort of falls flat. So when a trilogy is capable of ending on a strong note, when that third or final book is the strongest part of the series or the trilogy, you know you're getting into something good. And all in all, I am going to give Arbitrary Equilibrium a 10 out of 10. Like, this one actually really impressed me. I was really enjoying it all the way through. And the characters were just, as well as having a whole bunch of stuff to do, they just felt just that little bit more real in who they are, their interactions, and their reactions to everything that was going on. So, yeah. This is the part now where I kind of continue on with a certain tradition that I've had. Where once I've finished a trilogy or a series, I review the series as a whole. How good is the trilogy as a whole? Well, Visitor's Blood impressed me, very much so. I was hooked fairly quickly, despite, John being fairly military and me not having much in the way of enjoyment of military in general. Military fiction is definitely not something that I particularly enjoy. So, the fact that it kind of hooked me right off the start with aliens and vampires, and it only got better from there. So it's like, okay, let's see where this is going. Visitor's Blood got actually a pretty good mark from me. And after looking back, I gave it an 8.5 out of 10, which is a pretty good mark. The second book, Borrowed Loyalty, was also pretty fantastic. I'm not going to beat around the bush there. But I did find that Connie didn't have a lot to do, as I mentioned before. And there were some parts where it just kind of drug a little bit. But where it was strong, it was really strong. And it got a 9 out of 10 from me. It was actually really decent. And now with Arbitrary Equilibrium getting a 10 out of 10, the series, this trilogy is going to be actually really good. On average, it's got a 9 out of 10. And I think that's actually a pretty decent way to describe it. It's a 9 out of 10 trilogy. It's got some issues here and there, but for the most part, you're going to get a good read. You're going to enjoy what you're getting into. And I'm really happy that I read this trilogy. I'm happy that I gave this trilogy the time and the energy into doing things. And when I read Arbitrary Equilibrium, this was going to, it was a beta read. But as I explained to the author, I really just didn't think it needed any changes to the story. It got a 10 out of 10 for what I got out of it. If there's any changes to the story, I don't know about it, and I don't think there are any. I basically just said, yeah, but give it another round of edits and I think you'll be fine. And basically treated it as an arc review. I talked to the author about that, the author was fine with it, and yeah, here we are. So yeah, Arbitrary Equilibrium, 10 out of 10. Visitor's Blood trilogy as a whole, a 9 out of 10. Check this one out. It's worth your time. But anyway, that's all I got for you folks. So be sure to, subscribe to me or something. Like the video if you want to check out the book. I'll have the links for this book in particular in the description. And yeah, have a good one, folks.